From the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 15, verses 21 through 28. Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all, and his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly. Well, this passage requires a little bit of background, okay, a little bit of setup. One of my favorite memes on the internet is this. It's attributed to Mark Twain, but I don't think he ever actually said it. It says, "Good decisions come from experience, and experience comes from making bad decisions." All right, and I think that this is absolutely true in our lives, right? Now, I definitely, like I said, I'm not sure Mark Twain said it. Half the things that they attribute on the internet really fall under that Yogi Berra-ism. You know, if you remember Yogi, he was reported to have said, and actually he didn't actually say this, where he said, "I didn't say half the things I said." Right? And so half the things you see on the internet, they're attributed to folks who never actually said them. But nonetheless, I think this is absolutely true, that good decisions come from experience, and experience is your bad decisions. And bad decisions do help you make good decisions later. But this is something that we need to discuss in light of what appears to be not a great decision by Jesus when he starts, speaking to this person. So one of the things we need to go back to and visit in the ancient world is what their notion of perfection was. Because we think of Jesus as perfect, we think of God as perfect, but we need to go into the ancient world and remember what they actually thought of that concept. All right, the ancients were not absolutists. For example, they actually didn't even have a concept of infinity. So infinity wasn't invented for like 600 years after Jesus as a concept. So a lot of references in Scripture that we now take to mean infinity are words that actually just mean a really, really, really long time. You know, it's kind of like a little kid who doesn't know how to say infinite, so they say just like a jillion. Right? Because they're trying to express limitlessness, but they don't really have the concept of that in their minds yet, all right? So these words that get translated as perfect in English are these words teleos, and in Hebrew, for the Hebrew scriptures, is tamim. And these are words that kind of mean things like complete or mature or finished, all right? And so the idea is that we do believe that Jesus lived a sinless life, right? He lived a sinless life. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there was an absolutely optimal decision everywhere along the way. Because suboptimal decisions aren't necessarily sins, right? So he didn't sin. But does that mean that he ate the perfect amount of bread and fish every day? He chewed every bite, absolutely the optimal number of times that you should chew before swallowing, okay? You can make suboptimal decisions that aren't sins, all right? And what we believe is that he never sinned, okay? That doesn't mean that every decision was optimal. It doesn't mean that there isn't room to grow. And there's a lot of theological discourse around the idea of God and this notion of growth because we're trying to balance concepts in our mind. Like most of us believe that we have free will, all right? We also believe God has a plan. We believe God has our eternity in mind for humanity. And yet, we're going to do things of our own volition. Okay? So you're balancing all of these concepts, and a lot of folks have reached the conclusion that God as it appears happens, especially in the Hebrew Scriptures with the story of Noah and just the coming of Jesus, that God has to adapt along the way. That we do things that are not what we should do, and God figures it out and adapts. Okay? So this is a matter of decisions, adapting and changing, all right? With the story of the flood. God floods everything and then says, and I'm never going to do that again. All right? So this is a statement that what I did, I don't ever plan to do again. All right? So within this concept of perfection, I think is something that this ancient concept of perfection is something that I think is very hopeful for all of us. Because the ancient concept of perfection was not the absence of mistakes in the past. It was the idea of achieving completeness in the future. Because so often, right, you know, like I'm a baseball fan and a pitcher's working on a perfect game. And as soon as they give up one hit, one base runner, one walk, right, the perfect game is over. And that's our modern concept of perfection. As soon as you make the mistake, it's over. And that's not the ancient concept of perfection. The ancient concept of perfection was that it was a state toward which you were moving. All right? You are moving toward this completeness. You are moving toward this maturation. You are moving toward being everything that you could be. And it was achieving that was perfect. It was something that would lay ahead of you in your life as a goal, and it wasn't ruined because of something that you did before. All right? And that was the way they thought of this word. So this is a really important thing to keep in mind as we get to Jesus talking to the Canaanite woman. All right. Now, it makes the point that she's a Canaanite. Jesus, by the way, has been trying to be alone. For the last couple of chapters, Jesus has been trying to leave to be alone. So ever since John the Baptist was killed, Jesus tries to leave to be alone, to pray and mourn, and the people keep following him. So this next step was that Jesus went, it said, to the region of Tyre and Sidon. These are non-Jewish regions. All right, so he's like, all right, I'm leaving the country, basically, all right, in order to try and get away. There's nowhere in Judea I can go, nowhere in Galilee I can go, so I'm trying to be alone, so I'm leaving the country. So he goes into the land of Tyre and Sidon, where you have people living who have great enmity with the Jewish people. All right, these are not friends of the Jewish people, and it's a mutual dislike and distrust, and he has left because he's thinking there, I can finally get some peace and quiet. But he gets there, and a Canaanite woman, so it makes the point that, you know, she's not Jewish, she is one of these people who are despised, comes and starts shouting after him, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David." You know, she's being very respectful, and she's being incredibly courageous just to ask for a woman and a non-Jewish woman to try to speak to a rabbi is a really courageous act. But she's desperate, all right? This is her daughter. She's absolutely desperate, so she's going to try anything. And she goes and says, "Have mercy on me." She's so respectful. Says, "My daughter is tormented by a demon." And at first, Jesus does what a good Jewish man should do when a non-Jewish woman tries to talk to him. He doesn't talk at all. He ignores her. Says he did not answer her. Because he's not supposed to have interaction with a Canaanite woman. So he has no interaction at all. This is what he's supposed to do as a good rabbi. He's supposed to avoid the interaction completely. But the disciples are like, "Well, you know, she's really kind of bothering us. So would you get rid of her, please?" All right. And then he points out, he says, "Look, I'm not even talking to her because I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. She's not my mission. I am here on a mission. I am here with a purpose, and I'm trying to stay focused on achieving my purpose." And this is the idea of perfection. The idea of perfection is to complete your mission, complete your purpose, to do exactly what it is God sent you to do. And he says, God didn't send me to her. God sent me to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and I am going to stay focused on achieving completion of my mission. I'm going to focus on being perfect. And I'm not going to talk to her. But he gives the awful response. So when she comes up to him and says, will you please help me? He says, it is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Okay. So if Jesus is in seminary, he just failed pastoral care class. Okay. All right. Understand that in Middle Eastern culture, the likening to dogs is particularly insulting. Okay, so a dog is a lowly, dirty animal. It's something that to this day in Middle Eastern culture, you don't refer to people as dogs. You don't do anything with dogs. In certain parts of the Middle East, for instance, you don't even beckon a person to come with a hand gesture that looks like the way you would summon a dog, because then you're treating them like a dog, and this is highly, highly insulting. So this is about as insulting a statement as you can make, all right? This isn't even like the polite way of saying, no, I'm sorry, ma'am, I really can't help you today. No, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm busy. I have a limited amount of healing resources, and I really can't spare any for you today. I have a higher purpose here. No, this is bam. But what's behind this? In order to figure out a little bit of what's behind this, we need to look at that word fair, because it's a really odd translation of the word in order to say it is not fair. And in a lot of other English translations, you'll see words other than fair that are used. The word that got translated as fair in this case is this word kalos. And this word means, it's a beautiful, noble, good, worthy, honorable, and seen to be so. It's not so much about the innate quality of something, it's about how it looks. In fact, that word kalos is how we get the word calligraphy. So it literally means beautiful writing. Calligraphy literally is the cognate of that to mean beautiful writing, which is what it is, okay? Kalos, it's about something being beautiful. It's about a perceived quality. So the issue here is how this act would be perceived. How would this look for this proper Jewish man to help a Canaanite woman, the enemy, the people who they're not supposed to be associating with, all right? It's not about the act itself. It's about what this would do to his ministry. It's about what this would do with his disciples. It's about how this would look to everyone if they saw it. And he says, look, this would look terrible. This would look like you were taking children's food and throwing it to dogs. But she sees that scene differently. She sees the scene as, yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Yes, Lord. She's acknowledging, yes, you can see that scene that way, this hypothetical situation that you've put forth of food to dogs. You can see it that way. She's like, but you know what? Those dogs, they still get to eat. The dogs still eat. So you have the same scene, and you have two views of how they're going to look at the scene. You imagine the food being cast, crumbs going to the dogs, and so on the one hand, you can say, yes, this looks like children's food going to dogs, and on the other hand, you can say, yeah, but the dogs are still eating. Right? Dogs still get to eat. That's why every one of us who has ever owned a dog knows that the dog likes to hang out near the dining room table. Okay? Because it knows. It's like, may not have meant to, I'm not supposed to be fed here, but I do get fed here. All right? So Jesus seems concerned with how helping her will affect his mission, with how helping her will affect how his mission is perceived in the world, the impact that it would have. And you look at that scene and you have to kind of ask yourself, well, is this good or bad? This is the kind of situation we actually face in our lives fairly often. You sit there and you say, okay, I'd like to help, but how would this look? I'd like to do things, but how would the appearance of it look? How does that impact what I would do? Okay? Could this be misperceived? Could this actually harm my reputation or the reputation of the organization? All right? There are many times that we do think about what the appearance of it would be as opposed to the actual, innate quality of what's going on. So this thing of, is this good or bad, is an open question. And how you look at that circumstance really is going to be a matter of your choice. You get to a circumstance like that, and you get to decide what you're going to choose to see. What do you choose to see? What do you choose to see when there's someone who needs help in front of you? What do you choose to see in someone who is, say, unemployed? What do you choose to see in someone who is, for example, do you see someone lazy or maybe depressed? Right? What do you choose to see? Do you see someone who's being tough and they're sounding kind of mean, or maybe they're just really harassed and under a lot of stress? What do you choose to see? Right? So many things that we observe in life, all right, can be interpreted two ways or more. They can be interpreted in an understanding, charitable way, or they can be interpreted in a harsh, judgmental way. And usually, that's not about the situation as much as it is about what's going on in our own lives. Personally, I think if Jesus had gotten that time alone to recover, he might have responded a little better. Okay? But now when she says, Lord, help me, do you see a Canaanite woman with no standing, with no right to be asking him for help? Do you see a person whose situation presents a potential threat to the reputation of his mission and ministry? Or do you just see a person in need? Do you see a person who needs help? It's actually a good thing that most of us today encounter that story and have to be told about the first, but innately see the second. That we innately just see the person in need rather than an enemy. But I think a lot of that is because we're so far removed from that circumstance. Okay. All right. There are a lot of parts of the world where you could substitute different nationalities, different ethnicities, different religions for the character of the woman coming, and the people would first see an enemy. They would first see someone that one shouldn't talk to. They would first see someone who has no right to be asking for help before they would see the person who's just a human being, a mom trying to look out for her daughter. It's only because we don't have an innate visceral reaction to the word Canaanite that allows us to see that story differently today. But substitute whoever you might have an inclination for being the group, the person you would be most inclined to think badly about, and substitute that for the word Canaanite, and think about how you might respond. So she was just a person in need, and she changed Jesus' view of the situation. It changed his view to basically say, okay, I'm gonna help. No matter what. Even if this would hurt his reputation with the Jewish people, he's going to help. And that's something we need to remember, that it is important for us to have a purpose that we are working toward. It's important for us to have a mission, to have an idea of completion, of maturation, of perfection that we're trying to achieve, but we can't achieve it at the cost of who we are. Because if you achieve your goals and lose who you are in the process, what have you actually achieved? So who you are, your character, your being, your morals, your standards, all of those things have to be the guardrails within which you will always try to function on your way to achieving whatever it is you think your purpose is. Because if you lose who you are, what you achieve means nothing. She saw Jesus for the innately good person that he was. So when she says, when she answers to Jesus, and he's convinced by the response, and he says, "Woman, great is your faith." Just don't forget, the Greek prefix, all right, for great is mega. So if I were translating this for kids today, I would just say, and Jesus said, "You have mega faith." You have mega faith. And that mega faith was in him and his character. And his bad decision led to better decisions. And that's what matters for each of us. That our bad decisions don't destroy us forever. Our bad decisions should lead to better decisions. And that leads us toward the completion, the maturation, the perfection that we aspire to. So whatever bad decisions you've made can be the ground, the foundation of better decisions in your future, as we each strive to attain the perfection that God desires for us. Amen.